Welcome back to Dear Creator. We have Ciara, who is an Aquarius and a projector, an entrepreneur, the founder of Kiyoko Verde. She collects stories and builds communities, and she is the host of the Business Circle, an intimate online membership for entrepreneurs to build together. Ciara is also a one-on-one mentor for founders. She is a partner to experiment with your human design or unblock any limiting subconscious beliefs. All her work centers on you living well wherever you are. Thank you, Ciara, for being on the podcast. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. I guess living well right now because I'm saying I'm in Mexico, so I'm doing very good, soaking up all the sun.
Yay. Yeah. It's like super bright. Like anyone listening or watching on YouTube, like you have the sun coming in. Like, is it nice and warm there right now?
Oh yeah, I'm always bad at the Fahrenheit conversion, but it's like good, not too hot. There wasn't some curtains on these, so this was the best. That hopefully you can some palm trees peek in or something. I said it
Yeah,
looks like
yeah.
portals, basically. I'm like, looks like portals to something with all the light behind.
It does. I just like imagine just like the sun beams coming through the window and everything. That's amazing because I feel like that's like the opposite of what I'm experiencing right now. So I'm in the Chicago suburbs and we have like highs and lows of spring, winter, spring, winter. It's always, it was like rainy, then it was sunny. So I'm like, what do I feel right now? Like, do you feel like the weather like alters your mood or how you go about your everyday?
Oh yeah, 100%. But also, I mean, usually I'm in Vancouver, so we don't. That's the hardest thing about there is we don't get a lot of sun. You have to like internally source it or go somewhere
Oh,
else.
yeah.
But yeah, whenever it does change my mood so much. But the really weird thing, because I grew up with it, when I'm gone
Mhm.
for a long time and I'm like almost homesick, if it rains, it's like oddly comforting, even though I don't want it to be true.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Like
But yeah.
speaking of Vancouver, when I think I went there in October, was it Vancouver? I think so. That's like in the like near the Pacific
Near Seattle.
Northwest,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we went to Seattle, I think in 2019, and it was like October, so it was like rainy and colorful trees and like misty. And whenever I think of that trip or just like that area in general, I think of Twilight.
I was going to
It's like
say
so
that
comforting.
like when you started describing it, I was like, I
Yeah.
definitely those are accurate. I think part of Twilight was filmed in Vancouver too. Like most things are. Vancouver,
Yeah.
Seattle, like yeah, so very
Have you ever been
accurate.
to the suspension bridge park there?
Honestly, not the one you pay for, because I haven't brought any like tourists there, but there is like a parallel one that isn't the Capilano one. I've been to
Mhm.
like that hike, but you know how
Okay.
you don't go to things that are in your own city unless
Yeah.
someone's coming to visit. You
Yeah.
go. So I haven't been to the official one that's always in like movies or shows or somewhere that you like cutely just run across, which
Hmm.
usually it's like an actual admission to pay for it. But yeah, I've been.
Yeah.
Have you been to it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we went there. That was like super cute. I was like taking pictures and but like walking across the bridge, I'm like, "Oh boy, like it's kind of moving right now." Kind of scary.
Yeah, definitely. No, my partner will a lot of times like jump on things like that. And I'm like, please don't freak me out. So yeah, avoided
Yeah.
that.
That's so funny. Well, it's interesting that you're in Mexico City right now because I really want to ask you some questions around your Saturn return. Recently, I went through a Saturn return. Like, I just turned 30 this year. It's 2026. And so I feel like there was a lot of transformation. Like, when I turned 30, I talked about this on Instagram before, but it's like a switch just turned on and off. I was like a almost like a different person, even though like I'm still me. There's just like the way that I view certain things is different, how I operate, how I am creatively, and how I want to express myself. So I just like would really love to hear about your Saturn return experience and just when you think about that period of your life, what feeling immediately comes back?
Good question. I'm curious to hear about yours too, because it sounds like a lot of perspective switches. And for me, I feel like it was a lot of, I literally feel like it was two different chapters. Like there's before my
Okay.
Saturn return is like one life. And mine like definitely started around like 28. Like there's the person I was before and the person I was after. And I literally feel like it's two different lives or two different chapters.
That's
Like
so
I'm just
interesting.
such a different person. Um, I guess if you haven't been through one, like a lot of things can shake up if you haven't. dealt with them before then. And I feel like I
Hmm.
had a lot of things to shake up during that time.
Yeah.
So
What
everything
were those
changed.
things? What did you have to shake
Um,
up?
well, I feel like a lot of it, it's funny because it almost was like a precursor. Like right before my Saturn return, even like before 28, I got a different job. It was more like a tech startup. And so there was a lot more, I guess, like freedom, or you get to do a lot of things that you probably have like no rights to be doing, but you're just
Hmm.
like given the chance to do them. So I had that, I guess, what do you call it, door, like
Hmm.
opportunities open up. But I think a lot of it was just I guess it was even to give me that perspective shift you're talking about, to live a
Hmm.
little more or a little more like in alignment with what I actually wanted. Like I think I use a metaphor a lot of that time of I really remember clearly feeling like I was on a conveyor belt and I
Hmm.
just felt like I was moving along in life and I looked at what was the end of it and it wasn't a bad life. It just wasn't necessarily I was like it started feeling a little like I was trapped or like this definitely isn't what I want, what I would choose. And so for me, I think it was just, I mean, I had a breakup. I went on a trip to Mexico City after breakup. I lived alone for the first time. I was like single for the first, I had been like a serial monogamous, like 18 to 28. So I was
Hmm.
single, I lived alone. Um, I had a lot of things change with my career even because I'd been a lot more traditional corporate
Hmm.
before that. So I feel like basically every category, how you live, a lot of friends change, how you live, who you're friends with, your
Yeah.
relationship, your job, their living
Mhm.
situation, literally like everything you can think of switched around that time.
Yeah, and did that feel like an overnight thing? Like you just like kind of blinked and you were like, whoa, my life is different now. Like I just made all these decisions to change.
Yeah, I guess it was very much that trip because before that trip, I had been wanting to travel, and travel is, I don't know, this is I have like a Sag moon or what we want to pull it into,
Yeah,
but
what are your top three or what do they call them? The main three of your
yeah.
astrology.
So Aquarius Sun, always mix these up. Aquarius Sun, Sag Moon, and Pisces Rising. But I feel
Okay.
like the Sag Moon, I'm not as good as astrology as human design, but the basics of that I can understand. I definitely had a craving that wasn't happening. And so, yeah, I don't know. I guess it was just, I just feel like I kept hitting a wall. Like I really wanted to travel. My ex was like a lot older and he hadn't done that, or he'd done it a lot in his 20s. It just wasn't a priority to him. And so I just really, I don't know, I felt pulled to something and I felt like I kept hitting a wall. And
Hmm.
so I don't remember how it happened. I asked a friend who had never traveled with and was really different than me to go on a trip, and we'd never spent more than a couple hours together. So it's kind of a gamble. You know, when you travel with someone, it's like
Yeah.
it's a lot of time to spend together. But um, yeah, I don't even remember how we picked Mexico City. I think it was just somewhere we both hadn't been. I honestly I don't remember how it happened. And I had no expectations because I didn't really honestly know a lot about it, except it was a big city in
Yeah.
Mexico. So there's no level of disappointment. But yeah, I just felt, I don't know, I just felt very pulled. Like I felt like I was hitting a lot of walls. I'm like, I want to do this and it's not happening. And so I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna make it happen
Hmm.
for myself. And I don't know, I guess that was a bit more aligned. Maybe that's more the like a bit of rebellious for me at the time. Like I feel like I really followed a lot of paths before then. So
Hmm.
doing that, I want to do it, I'm just gonna do it. I feel like it kind of sparked that probably who I really was when I was younger, but I wasn't living that way in a while. So
Yeah, that's
I
so
do.
interesting. Did you stay in Mexico City then, or did you eventually leave? Like, how long were you in the city for?
Oh, I think it was like I didn't move there. It was only like a week, but just so many things shifted. I don't know. I guess it's that conveyor belt thing, or I hadn't really traveled in a while because it wasn't happening, and now I like solo travel all the time, but I didn't do
Hmm.
that before. Honestly, too, part of it is I'm really bad at directions. And so before Google could like fully lead us everywhere in my very
Yeah.
early 20s, I was like, I don't know. It sounds like a funny limiting thing, but it's a lot if you got to like figure your own way back on your own,
Yeah.
especially with other languages. So I let that limit me a little bit. But um, yeah, I just hadn't really done that before. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out the
Yeah,
question I was answering.
I don't remember what question I asked. That's just how it goes. No, that's interesting though, because like I feel like we do have those travels or trips that we go on that kind of just like changes our perspective a little bit. When you landed in Mexico City, were there any experiences that you feel like really shaped the next steps in your life or like the future direction that you now were stepping into versus like staying on that belt or
Yeah.
this? this path that you're like, it's not a bad path for my
Mhm.
life, but I know I can probably do more, or maybe like this is just not what I would choose. Because sometimes we get into those motions just like naturally, and then we kind of just wake up and we're like, this isn't for me. Like like I don't want this anymore. It's time to change. It's my life. I can take control.
No, 100%. It's funny because I have this really small story that really that shifted my perspective. Not small, but it's like basically it's like a conversation because
Mhm.
before I feel like yeah, I was because of how I grew up for a lot of things, I was looking for like the safer path or like looking a lot of steps
Ooh,
ahead. So I was like, okay, you know, which degree do I choose? Oh, well, business, a suit, that seems, safe. I don't know. I
yeah.
didn't know like and then the ladder, how do I climb? Like I just kept looking for steps to follow. I grew up in a pretty small town and there just wasn't like a lot of exposure to things until I got on my first plane ride or got to go to a new place. So I found travel always shifts me up like that. But I actually remember we were at my friend and I were at this one, I don't know, bar, and we had a conversation with some people. And there was one person, and it sounds, yeah, it's a little conversation, but it really had this shift in my head because I very much always felt like behind or like I was
Hmm.
always racing towards something. Like I will, like even like I didn't want to spend an extra year doing my degree because oh my gosh, like graduating a year later, like really now that doesn't. But at the time, I was just very concerned with, I guess, time. And so I had this
Yeah.
conversation with someone who was like about the same age as me, like 28, 29. And they were saying that in 5 years, they were going to be a doctor. And for some reason, I went like 28, 29, 30, I counted out to 32. And I was like, wow, it's 5 years until I'm 32. And I was like, that's high school. That's a whole, we don't have junior high. So I'm
Yeah.
like, that's um, a lot can happen in that time. And so for me, I don't know what clicked, but it just showed me that there was so much more room to, I guess, like play or
Hmm.
so much more time than I thought. I don't know. I still remember that conversation because I don't know, I guess for me, we always think of doctor being a long time too. So like in 5 years, I could be a doctor. Like I don't want to do that, but there's so much that could
Right.
happen in that amount of time. And so that conversation really stands out, which is at a bar of all places. It's kind of funny,
Yeah,
but
the best places for
that's where the
cross.
wisdom is.
Like, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I feel like, I mean, when I think about 5 years, I'm like, oh, wow, that's like a pretty long time. Like, there's a lot of room, there's a lot of space. But then it's also like, I sometimes have that fear where I'm like, 5 years, like, isn't that long of a time if you look at like your entire lifespan, you know? But I'm always somebody who's like, you can pivot whenever you want to because why not, you know?
Yeah, you're the queen of pivots. I love, I guess it was my first pivot, where I realized I'm like, I have
Yeah.
space to pivot.
Yeah. So did you feel like you were becoming someone new at the time, or it was just kind of this like idea that you're gonna change things up? And did you know what you wanted to do at the time?
Hmm. I don't know if it was new. It more felt like just shedding things.
Mm.
Like I feel like I said, because I grew up in this small town and I literally didn't go more than like an hour and a half from where I lived until I was 17. So there was just
Wow.
a lot of things where I'm like, this is what there is. This is the path. There just wasn't a lot of, I guess, external exposure. And especially back then,
Yeah.
it's like we didn't have the same way of the internet. It was like what you see on TV or which was pretty
Yeah.
similar to what I saw in front of me. So I think it was just a shift of like, I don't know, it was almost of a rebellion of whatever externally is presented there, that doesn't matter. Whatever's coming from me,
Hmm.
whatever's from myself. So it was really just a shedding of any like societal media, I don't know, paths that were presented as the way to be and just like let all those go.
Yeah, it's like you're finally like you're thinking for yourself, you're connecting more with your identity and like who you are. And then also I would just assume that it's like you're kind of like grounding those values as well that you have, because that's kind of like maybe going to direct you into that direction that is meant for you. Okay, you were in Mexico City and then you went home after that trip.
Yes. And I just changed my whole life.
Oh my gosh.
I like didn't have my ex pick us up at the airport, which was also like weird because he dropped us off. Told him not to pick
Mhm.
us up, came home. I remember I like threw up,
Oh my
broke up
God.
with him, went it like right away, like went and I mean he was very gracious. There was a lot of things where I had like a bit of a soft landing or like an unraveling out of that, but went to live on my own for the first time. Like I said, like spend a lot more time with
Hmm.
I think I used to like fill space. with,
Okay.
like if I was walking alone, I would like listen to music or call someone or, just kind of buffer in some
Hmm.
way. And then all of a sudden I'm like living alone. I never had the early 20s single, so I'm single. There's just
Yeah.
so many things, getting to do all these things in your career that are probably like you're younger or less qualified. You wouldn't get to do them in other areas. So all
Hmm.
of a sudden it was like there was just no edges.
Wow. Yeah, like no, like you're just free. You
Yeah.
probably just felt super free and to just be able to do literally whatever you want without thinking that there's somebody else, because like in a relationship too, like you have to consider, of course, like what the other person thinks or, spending time with them and things like that. But no, it's like you have all the time in the world to do whatever you want. So what did you decide to do since then?
Oh, for sure. I agree. I feel like sometimes, when they ask you like what's a time where you're rhythm and in flow, that's definitely one of the times where I was just following like my own rhythm, my own flow of what I wanted to do. Like I didn't own a TV, I didn't watch
Mm,
it. Like it was just that's one of the times I will go back to. And I feel like that set the foundation for if we're talking about, yeah, what has changed. Eventually, like when that startup was over, that's what led me to entrepreneurship. I was single for like 5 years, which I don't know, I think it's really good for people to be single at some point in their life, a lot of
yeah,
people.
that's a
So
long time too
yeah,
for some people, like some people are always like relationship,
yeah,
relationship, relationship.
yeah, 18 to 28, that was me. So
Yeah.
it was good for me to have all that space.
Mhm.
And yeah, that led me to entrepreneurship. That led me to a lot of travel. That led me to, I guess, even trying to think through, like, just eventually I even did like solo travel. Like, I do a lot of solo travel now. I
Nice.
didn't do that. Like, me before wasn't even like traveling with other person. So I think that, yeah, it was just a lot of permission to be to myself, which sounds silly and like we should naturally have that. But I don't know. I feel like around that time, I just really built the foundation of what do I want to do? What is my like intuition telling me to do. And yeah, it pulled me into eventually entrepreneurship, to like traveling a lot, like splitting my time between places. And I don't know, just really lean into, sounds really silly, but things that like make you happy and ignoring a lot of those. Because when you're around it all the time, like in corporate or in
Hmm.
certain things, it's just what you hear, it's the language around you, it's what everyone else is doing. So that's just what your brain gets filled with. And then you're like,
Yeah.
wait, same thing with a small town. It's like there's these different bubbles. And then you can just
Hmm.
pop it and be like, wait, these are just arbitrary things that are here. Like, I don't have to listen to these.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of how, like, a lot of people, they kind of just choose a path and they stick to it and they kind of like, they just don't expand. They don't challenge themselves and they just get on that repeat cycle of just work, sleep, or, the traditional path, I'm using air quotes, like go to school, get a job, get married, have kids, retire, die. It's so interesting when like you find yourself in a cycle similar to what I explained, and then you pop that bubble, like you said, and like you just see all the different possibilities. To summarize like your transformation, I would just love to hear like from your perspective, like who was Ciara before and who did she become after this experience?
Hmm. Well, I think who I was before, with a lot of compassion for myself and understanding of why I was that way. Like I guess it was a lot more of, it was like external safety. Like I was
Hmm.
looking at paths or things there and like resourcing in that way. And I can understand why I did that and why that was a necessary learning process and why I can even have empathy or compassion for, people I work with who are like feeling more pull towards like what's safe or what's comfortable because
Hmm.
I spent a lot of time doing that. And after, I feel like there was just a lot of resourcing of either it be systems or experience where I trusted myself and it paid off, or like I said, even career things, like doing different edgy things where it just very much became I was that internal resourcing.
Hmm.
And so it was just like, I guess you want to say like safety or trust like within. And
Hmm.
then that person, like what is coming from you, like there's any direction you can face. You don't have to be pulled towards or guided by anything external. It just gives you a lot more room to play. So I think it just became a lot more, I guess, like intuitive. And I had that like center of safety, like very internally, and just knew that like I could trust myself.
It's like you kind of like created your own safety like within versus like looking for it. outward or something
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah.
That's
And I
interesting.
proved it to myself. Like I did it and like, smaller things and then bigger things. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I
Oh,
got
so like,
this.
do you believe like it, or did you see that it was more of like a gradual thing, like to find that or to develop that safety for yourself and like intuition?
I think so. Like I think especially through myself, like it was like a gradual experimentation. I mean, in a way I did do a lot of things at once, but when you see how
Mhm.
far I've gone, I didn't jump right into the end. Like I didn't jump immediately
Right.
into entrepreneurship. Like there were some things that stayed the same. There were still
hmm
some definite rugs pulled underneath myself for some
Yeah.
parts. But it wasn't like every single aspect at once. It was kind of like hold one steady and experiment in the other and then
hmm
switch kind of thing. So
Yeah. Yeah. When you jumped into, well, you didn't really jump, but you
yeah.
like started to transition or soft pivot into entrepreneurship. Was human design one of the first things that you dabbled with, or what did that look like? That entrepreneurial journey look like for you?
Yeah, it definitely was a long tail. I feel like because that was, if we go back to relationships, because that was the first time I was single, the first things that came into my world were more relationship based. So they were like love
Mhm.
language and attachment styles and things like that, where
Yeah.
they gave me like other frameworks. And then the people that spoke of that's how I found human design actually, is there's someone who had a podcast about relationships. Then I found a podcast about manifestation like Lacey Phillips.
hmm
And then I found human design through that. And so it was kind of like one led to the other out of like one out of necessity and two out of like, oh, these are very intriguing. So I did find them over time. But I feel like the further I got into entrepreneurship, the more human design became helpful in my career
hmm
because there's so many like shoulds and have tos and things that I had before where it's like, there's society norms. There's also like, even in entrepreneurship, there's oh, this is the way to do things. This is
Yeah.
this is the algorithm, this is this. And there's still a lot of, I don't know, have tos that are maybe
Yeah.
someone else's have tos, but might not be yours. So that's where it became more and more useful to be like, okay, wait, do I have to do that? Like basically anything now I would kind of question if it's
hmm
everyone or an ultimatum or, this is the way. I feel like after Saturn returned, a different person again is like every single thing that more rebellious question of, okay, wait, let me look at this for myself. Let me like check.
hmm
I just had that homogenization of everything works for everyone was not
Yeah.
working for me anymore. And that's where I think human design was came into like the career arena more in
Mhm.
particular.
Yeah, I was going to ask you like what resonated about or what resonated with you about human design. And it sounds like you kind of were starting to answer that, but like were you applying it to yourself first and then you're like, "Oh, I could actually support clients with this," or like how is that development or what does that development look like for you?
Yeah. I did definitely start with myself first. I think a lot of people do because you see the proof, you see it for yourself, and then
Yeah.
you're like, whoa. And then you start around with your friends, other people, it lands with them.
hmm
But yeah, I think it was the same for me. A lot of it was, especially as I explained to when I was in that transition, I did come from a lot more, I don't know, like conscious proof, or, I didn't, I was looking for a little more concrete things. So I did like
hmm
that human design was like applicable
Yeah.
like more so than some other you could experiment with it, you could see it for yourself. It was like a little bit yeah, it was more tangible. And so
hmm
I did start with myself with, I don't know, even little things like I, work differently than other people. And I had experienced the classic like projector burnout of like trying to keep up with a lot of the world that just has like a different way of using their energy. And mine's just a bit more flowy. And I had
hmm
definitely seen it to believe it. Like I'd already lived the other way to be like, okay.
Aren't
Um,
projectors like rare too? Like they're a small percentage of the population.
yeah, like 20%. So
Okay.
we're not the majority. I'd say there's like 30% of the world that's not in that
Mm,
more consistent energy. So
Interesting.
yeah,
And
that's a nice exhale to find out. You're like, oh, okay.
yeah, it's like I'm not alone, but also like no wonder certain things in society don't work for
Yeah,
me because society is not created for projectors.
exactly. So that was a really nice exhale. I find a lot of projectors really good. I mean, anyone can get excited about human design, but for that particular reason, you're like, oh, okay.
Mm.
Like this is why I was so burnt out. There was nothing wrong with me. It's the system. So,
Yeah, you get a lot of clarity when you learn about your human design. I mean, you helped me figure out a lot with my design, and it was like eye-opening and just made so much sense. For anyone listening, Sarah helped me figure out that I'm open throat,
mhm.
and so like not over preparing for things and just I don't know, like even just like my response, like I'm always like, yeah, 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 whenever people are talking, and I'm just like, why do I do that? Why do I have to respond verbally to things? Or just like, I don't know, sometimes I sigh really loud just to like release. Maybe that's a nervous system thing, I don't
Mhm.
know. But yeah, it's just like really interesting. And I I find human design really cool because like you said too, if you're experimenting, you can experiment with like the different parts of your design and things like that, which I'm sure you could probably speak better on because I'm like just kind of rambling. But do you feel like when you reflect back at your Mexico City and Saturn return and just shifting more into entrepreneurship with like all of this experimentation, when you learned about your human design, do you feel like it reflected your design to a T, or like what was the reflection, I guess? What does the reflection look like for you when you looked back?
Well, I think the biggest piece for me is looking at like how you make decisions in human design. And the
Mhm.
thesis there is like a lot of us will try and do things in our head and try and
Yeah.
make a perfect mental decision, which a perfect mental decision doesn't exist. Because if you believe in the universe or whatever you believe in, I think anyone can kind of decide that we can't know from step A what's going to happen at the end.
Hmm.
But we, as humans, we try and do that, or it feels safer. And so I think for myself with like human design, it's very much this like next right step for anyone. Like I feel like your authority in human design helps you understand your own, I guess, like flavor or way of looking at your intuition and just kind of trusting that like next right step. And before I was definitely very much when we were describing it, like in the conscious, like following certain paths because this will lead to this kind of thing, thinking that we know the ending and then just letting that go and being, I don't know, like I didn't really know what was going to happen when I like lived alone or broke up or had all these different experiences, but I just kind of trusted, like, I just feel drawn to this. I just have like an
Yeah.
instinct to do this. And that definitely is, I can see it. I didn't even know at the time, like, that's what I was doing. I think I was just, as I said in the beginning, was like trusting myself, but
Hmm.
if I reflect on it, I can definitely see, could, like you said, examine it and see how that was happening.
Like the patterns, like, oh, this is very projector, or this is very like, you have, for those who aren't familiar with human design, you have like different numbers for the lines and stuff. I don't remember what they're called.
Yeah.
Profile lines?
Profile. Yeah, nailed it.
Okay, okay, because I'm a 6 too, so like obviously or not obviously there are different traits or experiences that those profile lines go through. So I think that's kind of interesting on just how like we might be living day to day, doing like being in the motions, making decisions, acting certain ways, and it's just like who we are. But then like when you look at human design, it's kind of like a oh, interesting. Like this makes sense. Or it's like, huh, like, am I supposed to be doing this? Am I not supposed to be doing this? Should I be a little bit more playful? And I find that interesting with just the whole operational part of being a human
Yeah.
in itself.
Yeah. Sometimes I even describe it as like a manual, not in a prescriptive way, but just
Mhm.
in a like how experiments work, where they're like, here's the like the control, the testing. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
try something that might be different. Like you're saying, if you're living a little bit away from it, it could be trying something that's different. Or sometimes I find it just gives us words that articulates things that either we would never been able to describe or we don't realize are unique to us. And then it just
Mhm.
helps us lean into them more, where they're like, oh, that is true. Like you with the two, like there might be some like really natural gifts that you have, but you just don't realize because they came kind of easy to you. So you
Yeah.
don't think of them as gifts because you're like, oh, everyone can do that. But then someone reflects to you like, wow, Morgan, it's amazing that you do that. And you're like, oh, because we have these other things. We're like, oh, I think I have to work hard to do something. Like a
Yeah.
natural gift can't be a gift. Or
Mm.
even for myself, I feel like I have like a 3 and there's a lot more level of experimentation there. And that's the one I have to, when you're talking about lean into or play with more,
Hmm.
that one has been a really good one in entrepreneurship to be like, okay, we just throw it out there. We learn through making mistakes, but that's definitely not really what corporate encourages you to do.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a good reflection actually on just how when you were on the one path and then you learned your human design, how that there might have been that tension between who you are and like what you were there to do and can create that friction between getting things done or just, I don't know, some things I just like dread doing. And it's like, I know a friend of mine too. She's like, if I have my mind set on not doing something, there's nothing you can do or say to get me to do it. And like sometimes I feel that way as well. And I wonder if it's human design related.
Totally. And then you're just like, that's true. And then you just know that. And it gives you something to play with. You're like, oh, okay, how do I
Hmm.
frame this in my mind? Or how do I do it in a way like it was something you really have to do? How do I
Yeah.
balance this with something that I do enjoy so I can like gamify it? Yeah, it just gives you, I don't know, your own set of tools, whatever, like toys to play with, whatever you want to call them. So I love
Yeah.
that about it because it's like never really done. You're always like getting to play with it, experiment.
Yeah. Yeah. So like once you learned your human design, how did that support making decisions moving forward as you were going into entrepreneurship and you've blossomed into this newer version of yourself after your Saturn return?
Mm. Well, I feel like the biggest thing is even like the way that I work, because a lot of times like projectors have different energy than
Hmm.
other people. It might not be as consistent, but to compensate for that, we're almost like more efficient. So
Hmm.
we can like we wouldn't maybe need to be like we would have to before like sit at our desk from like a 9 to 5 every day, even if you're done, or you just always have to be like doing and outputting. And I feel like for myself, one of the biggest things is just how I schedule my time
Okay.
and having a lot of space because even though we're not always outputting as a projector, our brain's always like having things come. So we could be like on a walk or doing the dishes or something else. And you're still like always like background, like synthesizing or having things come together or like noticing things. So it's kind of like you're working, but you're not always output working.
Hmm.
So I think one of the biggest things is having like freedom to how to use my calendar and my time and like not having to like have like these like forced outputs. It was
Hmm.
a bit of a readjustment though, because I did have a really long time in the other way. So it's almost like too much space at first. You really get to like design it all and play for something that works for me. Because it was a lot of it's like a lot of open space and a lot of decisions,
Yeah.
but it just at the same time it's so freeing and worth it. Like it feels a lot better. Like it might be like working a little bit every day, but it doesn't feel like work the same way. There's a lot
Hmm.
more like ease in how I went about it. So I feel like just even lifestyle of how I structure my days or even where I am, it always felt
Hmm.
very trapping to me to like have to go into an office all the time, but being able to work from home or,
Hmm.
chat with you from Mexico,
Yeah.
that really feels very freeing to me. And I get exposed to a lot more like inspiration or yeah, it's just honestly, it's like an exhale.
Yeah. I feel like that's a really cool description of like how it feels. It's like it's just like an exhale, like a sigh of relief that you finally have a structure to your week that aligns with your energy and like who you are and how you're designed. Something that I would love to hear is more of application of human design for people listening because I think a lot of people are entrepreneurs, maybe they have a side hustle going on. What are some tools or systems that maybe are human design influenced or just like human design as a whole that people can use in their life, their business, just like their day to day that, or maybe even like their relationships that you would recommend maybe starting with?
Mm. Well, I mean, there's a lot to play with. There might be different things that resonate with different people. I think one of the biggest things is like I said, just staying away from any homogenization or like this is how it works for everyone kind of
Yeah.
thing. Like I find like even in some of the women that are in the like the business circle, like for some of them, they'll get a lot of traction from using their network or through a lot of referrals. And so,
Hmm.
or even like their social, they might want to make it more like community driven. And
Hmm.
that is maybe different than this, like, you have to post every day or like, like really have all these like funnels and that kind of thing where they just find like things come through referrals. So I think it's like even if you didn't know your human design, it's kind of going back to that permission to just feel what does right, what feels right for
Hmm.
you, what like feels more intuitively strong for you. A lot of times they say if you just use like your authority, like how you make decisions, your own intuition, and your strategy, so how you like kind of make things happen, that that could be the only two things you need to know about human design. So I think,
Oh, interesting.
yeah, I think one of the biggest things is a lot of people might even learn about human design, but not start to implement it. Like it's a lot of words. It's a lot of
It's a lot to
information.
learn
Yeah.
from.
It's like a whole other language. You're like, especially a lot,
Yeah.
like I said, there's a lot, even today, you're like, okay, there's these numbers, there's like a lot
Yeah,
of
I'm like,
weird
what are
names.
these called?
It's a lot of language. Like I think it's so cool, even the way you did it. Like, because I have like a more instinctive authority. So it's funny because the thing I get drawn to first in someone's chart is a lot of times what lands. So even yourself, like we talked about your throat, and it's like, okay, I'll play
Mhm.
with that piece. And you'll kind
Yeah.
of like see how that goes. Like maybe you like prepare less, or sometimes you notice if you are taking up space like just to talk.
Mhm.
Because it feels like getting comfortable with the silence kind of thing.
Mhm.
And it lets you like play with just that piece and then like maybe add add on more later. Cause yeah, I just find a lot of people, it's a lot of info or even my friends who might have like done a reading or heard about it. They're just like trying to recall, words or jargon. Where I
Mm.
feel like just having like a piece, like maybe even just the strategy or just the authority and playing with that a little bit for even
Mhm.
small decisions. Like I think one woman I told her this like a couple years ago and she ended up joining the business circle and she's like, I've been doing this for 3 years, where a lot of the world is like yourself, like just responding to things and you need something to kind of like respond to, right? Like a yes or no thing or options. And so I
Mhm.
gave her like such a simple example of like even, when we might have talked about this because I say it a lot because it makes sense, but like even something small like what you want to eat for like a meal and just having like someone ask in terms of like options instead of open question. And she's like, I've been doing that with my partner for a long time. It makes the conversation so much easier. And I feel like that's another example of partnership. Like you kind of understand
Mhm.
how the other person would like a question phrase. And it will kind of, she'd been experimenting with that for a couple of years and it saw a lot of traction with her. And then that's when you could maybe add something else on because you're like, wow, it's a lot easier if I have something to respond to.
Yeah. It's like developing a habit, right?
Hmm.
Like you just start small and then you work your way up to adding more habits after you've completed a week or a month of doing it. I think that's so smart because, yeah, as somebody who knows about human design, maybe you know your design, your profile lines, your authority, whatever. It it's a lot of information at once, but like if you just focus on one thing at a time and like just really get in tune with it or experiment and play with it, then you can then like after you go through those motions, you can move on to the next thing. And it kind of reminds me of like how some people learn by doing and like we can look at charts all day, but unless you apply it or test it out, then maybe it's just information. It's not like a tool that you can use. But then once you use the tool, it does wonders. It's awesome. I love it.
Exactly. And you actually see it like proof to yourself because that's like the idea of it being
Yeah.
an experiment instead of just thinking it and being like, oh, okay, that's cool. But if, like you
Hmm.
said, if you don't apply it, then you don't kind of build that trust that, okay,
Yeah.
doing something differently works for me. Like, especially on the entrepreneurship example, like we always, so many of us for a while, it's getting changing now, but post every day or the algorithm will blah, blah, blah. But then some people do it differently that's a little more
Yeah.
aligned to their design, maybe a different, like just a certain platform, or maybe they like completely go offline and work off referrals or something. But
Yeah.
they see how that can work for them and they see the
Hmm.
traction because otherwise they just keep trying to do the thing that isn't really designed for them. And then you don't really see the results from that either. So it's either you do that long enough where you're open to trying something new, or even earlier if you just kind of stay uh, closer to your own design when you experiment.
Hmm.
I feel like it can, I don't know, speed up that process a little bit. There's a lot of experimentation in entrepreneurship, but experimenting
Hmm.
in something that's more gives you like a cheat sheet and what people are fruitful with for you to experiment with.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like human design is one of those experiments that it could benefit entrepreneurs and how they make decisions or just making sure they are balancing work, life, things that they want to do, and I've had multiple conversations with people about how like entrepreneurship is like this personal journey. And I feel like human design is also personal to you. And so kind of integrating that and using it as a tool might help that personal growth or development that entrepreneurs experience because yes, we're going through the motions, selling our offers, networking, sales, content creation, marketing, everything. Like we wear so many hats, but we learn so much about ourselves. So human design could be a really beneficial tool to learn more on how we actually operate and how we respond or just make those decisions. Was there anything that surprised you about learning your own human design, or did it just all make sense?
Mm, I mean, some of it definitely took some experimentation because I was living very much in my, like, I hadn't experimented with some things that were there. I think there's a certain level too. This is where like the experimentation comes in, is even human design, like anyone that's like a reader or a teacher, they only live their own design, right? Like anything else they're
Mhm.
speaking about academically. Like they've just heard about it, they've studied it, but they don't live it. So even like my authority, the way I make decisions is like splenic. So it's like your spleen, it's like instinct. It's like it, but a
Hmm.
lot of people will call it this like quiet whisper. And that didn't resonate with me because I don't feel like mine comes in as like a quiet whisper, quote unquote.
I'm like,
A lot of people call it, and I think some people do experience it that way. So I don't want to like
Mhm.
disparage that description because for some people it really lands. But for me, I'm like, I don't have a quiet, I don't know. I'm like, where is this whisper coming in? I'm like hearing voices.
Yeah.
Like that one took a bit to land. And I don't know, over time I figured out that mine is a lot more like almost like I like visually notice things or pay attention to them. So
Hmm.
it's not really like a verbal whisper. It's more almost like the metaphor for splenic sometimes is like how a deer in the forest will just like run. Like, it hears something, it doesn't even think, it just moves. And my,
Yeah.
I guess, continuation of that is like, how does it know where to go? You know what I mean? Like it sees that
Hmm.
tree, it sees that pond, it just sees certain things that stand out and it follows that route. And so I think that
Hmm.
like for me, it was just noticing how even my own authority shows up for me instead of the teachings, which if people don't have that authority, they're the same. What the even there's so much nuance in human design. I'm like, this is the only thing complicated enough to actually understand, explain all
Yeah.
the nuances that people have. But yeah, it's seen like your own way within that and really like understanding the nuances of how that is for yourself. So I feel like that, like it definitely like my authority took some time for me to play with. And I used to ask a lot of, I guess even like mental questions. I was like, how does your quiet whisper show up? Because it just,
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I had, people will say it's almost just like like behind, I'm pointing behind my ear. Like they'll have something like come in and I'm like, oh,
Hmm.
that's cool. But that wasn't my personal experience. So that one
That's
definitely took some time
interesting.
to untangle.
Yeah. If anyone needs to get into the nuance with human design, they need to reach out to you. Definitely like make sure everyone has your contact information. Why do you think we often distrust what we already know about ourselves?
I could definitely say I've had that experience too. Yeah, I guess we don't really live that way anymore, right? Like we're not brought up to like, oh, trust your intuition. Like sometimes people say that, but then there's even a nuance which human design shows us like what your intuition is,
Mhm.
how it shows up for you. I don't know. I feel like, yeah, there's just a lot of societal, cultural, the way the world is
Yeah.
set up is nothing is kind of showing us like to lean into ourselves, lean into our own intuition. And unless you have some experiences, from my own experience, even like of trying something and seeing it pay off, like if you don't take a step in that direction, how do you know it's going to work? Like our brains, we know they're more tribal, they're wired for safety. So it's kind of building that, I don't know, proof to yourself of you can do something
Hmm.
different. You can do, we're just very tribal. Like we're meant to kind of be similar. That's the way we used to live like everyone else. So until you kind of see like, oh, okay, this paid off, the results of it, it can feel, I guess, scary or your brain just like, this is different. Don't do different.
Yeah, yeah. It's like that uncomfy feeling, and it's like, I don't know. It's like when you're
Yeah.
about to like jump into the pool, you're like, I don't know if it's gonna be cold.
But if you haven't seen, you know how like they talk about how, when the first person ran that, whatever it was, mile, and then tons of people could do it after, even just my own
Hmm.
experience, if you haven't seen anyone do something really different, how is your mind expanded to know that's possible kind of thing?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's almost that experience where you contemplate, am I going to be the first one? And I think that kind of goes into a conversation about leadership, which maybe we'll have you on again and we can talk about that or something. But yeah, it's interesting. I feel like a tool like human design and the system that you can use to experiment with, I feel like it does kind of help build self-trust in a way and just like really get to know yourself and build confidence in a sense to just be who you are. Like for me, I kept moving things around for like my work schedule or like when I wanted to wake up or when I wanted to go to bed, just like the day-to-day things. And I learned in astrology that my sixth house is in Gemini, which I believe is for like work operations, things like that. And so I like to change things up. It's like I kind of have like these two projects going on at once where I kind of go back and forth, back and forth. I like to change up the environment. I like to change up when I work, when I don't work, all of that stuff. And that all like gave me so much clarity when I figured that out about myself because before I thought I was just having like analysis paralysis or I was just being chaotic, but it's just like how I operate and now I embrace it. So I feel like
Mm.
human design can also be kind of like that similar experience.
For sure. Because you're like thinking, oh, I have to have structure. If I do it the same way every day, that will be great for me. But I feel like if I remember too, in your human design, I feel like you're a manifesting generator and maybe even like a quad right, like a lot of your arrows are right. And both of
Mhm.
those would also give you, if those are correct, would give you a lot of
Is
permission for the same thing you said.
is generator and manifesting generator the same thing? Because I think I'm a generator
Okay.
too.
I think that that might even come from I think you're like a lot of your arrows were right facing if I remember too. So that's a little bit
Hmm.
more freedom to be more like intuitive and not
Yeah.
have the same thing at the same time
Yeah,
every
that's
day.
it's interesting. Like I think even just like some background too for anyone listening, the more I learned about my human design, I believe like my environment is caves. And then something I learned too, which is just random, is like I like to have a little bit of crisp air coming in through the window. I don't know what that has to do with anything, but I learned that and I was like, that's so true. Like I literally have like a window open and it's like I could be all cozy, but like just a little crisp air coming through, a little candle, just like cozy vibes.
I love that. And that's what I love about it. It's like so specific where you're like, I wouldn't have even known to say that. But then you
Mhm.
hear it and you're like, oh, like, yeah, that is me. Like, and now I'm just gonna lean into like my cave, but with my cozy, little elements in there. And you might not even have thought like you would know it, but maybe you weren't consciously aware to set it up that way. And so yeah, that's
Hmm.
why I think it's nice to just and then, yeah, you tried it out and you're like, I do like that. I have noticed I
Yeah.
like that. I just did never think to say it or call it out before.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, what do you think is the most misunderstood thing about human design?
Mm, I mean, other than people not knowing what it is, but I think it's what we were speaking about earlier, is a lot of people might do one reading or just look at something, and even if you look it up, and there's just a lot of words. It's like a whole other language if you really get into it. And I think it's more just not implementing or playing with or experimenting with that like little piece
Hmm.
because yeah, I think a lot of it can be like overly conscious. Like just, a lot of like labels or a lot of things or a lot of even like even when I was describing like the quiet whisper, you're just like, oh, okay, I'm gonna look for my quiet whisper, and being
Hmm.
a little bit more, I guess, like strict about it. Or like any
Yeah.
system, I feel like we could take it and make it almost like a label or
Right.
take it really at face value. And I think there's just so much in playing with it and experimenting and like proving to yourself or even like that small thing like you're like I like my cave like even looking at your thing like it looks like a cozy cave that you're in right
Hmm.
now and
Yeah.
I feel like that's the part where yes yeah it can get a bit misunderstood or it could be like oh it doesn't really resonate but I don't think anything resonates if you hear like 35 new things simultaneously.
Yeah.
It can be overwhelming so I guess it's the pacing of it, the pacing and
Yeah.
the actual like playing with it.
Yeah, it takes time. It takes patience to kind of get to know it and just taking little bits at a time and
Mhm.
experimenting.
Yeah, that's why I do a lot of longer containers. Like, I have
Mhm.
a ongoing memory. It's not like a 3 month. course. We
Yeah.
like play with it over time. And it is so nice to for yourself, but also I think we didn't really talk about like for others because it helps you
Hmm.
understand how your partner operates or how your friend operates or how even in the circle I have, like they might hear like, oh, okay, I do this, but maybe some of my clients need this. And maybe I don't know their design, but maybe I just know that some people like to get up on the weekend and like do a bunch of things and check it off and make them feel great. And some people are just like naturally inclined to, they don't get the same level of satisfaction from that. And so it's just even knowing, or like some people, they might be like, oh, you just need more rest. But no, it would feel more satisfying for them to check all those things off. So I think it's just understanding how other people are wired too and how you might be unique or you could serve your clients or understand your partner or your friend differently. There's
Yeah.
a lot of power in that too.
Yeah. Well, amazing. I feel like we've learned a lot about human design. It was just like relatable to hear some of your Saturn return stories. I feel like everyone goes through a Saturn return, right?
Yeah.
It's like you might not even know it. I was telling my partner David, I was like, "You're going through your Saturn return." And he's like, "What? What is that?" And I told my mom, like me, David, my mom, and my grandma went through Saturn returns all within the same year, which was insane. But yeah, I feel like everyone goes through it, but everyone's experiences are so different. So I appreciate you sharing your story. If you could speak to the version of yourself when you were in your Saturn return, or maybe right before your Saturn return, what would you tell yourself?
That's a good question because I feel like there was like a lot to experiment or learn. I wouldn't necessarily like guide myself differently, but I think the biggest thing I learned during that time, and I would just reinforce to myself, is this certain level of, um, I guess, just like self-trust. And
Hmm.
I feel like I was so much more like, I don't know, I want to say like powerful. Like there was so much more to me than I even realized. So I think it would just be encouraging myself to really, yeah, to really trust my instinct and that there was so much more, I guess, like capacity that I have that I just haven't even
Hmm.
seen or haven't even realized. So what's over the horizon kind of thing.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on Dear Creator and sharing everything that you shared today, like your stories, your wisdom, insights. Where can everybody find you? And is there anything that you'd like to shout out to invite anybody into your world to work with you or get more human design knowledge from?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely most active on Instagram. So that's Kiyoko Verde. I'm sure we can link that because it might be hard
Mm-hmm.
to spell. So I have that. And then, yeah, if anyone is an entrepreneur and looking for, I think someone recently, like one of my alum called it like a cocoon, looking for a cocoon of like an area to grow within, like kind of experiment with things, experiment with their human design and just clouding out any noise. I do have the business circle as a membership. And sometimes, like you went to, I'll do community ones
Mm-hmm.
too that are all about networking. So that or one-on-one work if that's your preferred container or you want to be there longer. I do have that long corporate experience. I know all those things if you want to speak that language, but I feel like I take it in a lot more of an intuitive way. So I kind of bridge between the two worlds of the more practical and the more, intuitive, if you want to say.
Mm-hmm.
So one-on-one coaching as well.
It was really nice to chat with you about human design and everything. I've been to the business circle. So, yeah, I hope everyone goes and checks you out, connects with you, follows you, and joins. And yeah, thank you so much for being on Dear Creator. I can't wait for everyone to hear this conversation.
Oh, thank you for having me. And yeah, I'm excited to connect with more people. Maybe I know you have a lot of pivots. So anyone going through that pivot, that Saturn return, I've been there.
Yeah.
I know it well. So happy to
Yeah.
chat, support, connect. As soon as you realize you're in a Saturn return, you're like, oh, it makes so much sense.
Hmm.
My
Like
whole world is shaking
it's
around.
the awareness, I think. Like I hope everyone who goes through a Saturn return knows that they're going through a Saturn return. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
because once you know, you're like you can decide if it's going to be really good for you or not. No.
exactly. It's just like it makes sense. You're like, why is my whole world shaking up? And then you're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. And then you hear all the other stories, like on the other side, who've been through it, how it works out. So yeah, it can
Yes.
really shake your world up.